How come nobody will say it? I'll say it, but I haven't really found over the past few days that anyone was willing to say it. I don't think it's out of fear. I think it just might be out of either confusion or total ignorance. The conference chaos of the past, what are we going to say, 3 to 5 days? I mean, it really just sort of has taken off the last 3 to 5 days. The dominoes were pushed by one school. Does anyone not want to acknowledge that? This started with one move. It led to a free-for-all, but it started with one giant. And that giant just happens to be the richest school in the game, and it started this entire process. Now, that led to a panic. But it's funny now over the weekend, and I think it's boring to most fans, but it's pretty monumental, to say the least. But no one really wants to point out the really, really richest school is the one who started the whole thing. Now, it also, as I'll point out, could have also been the one that says, hey, we're about to knock over all these dominoes. Why don't we get together and have a plan? They didn't do that either. That's not solely the fault of the richest school of all. But it probably would have helped. Let me give you some helpful ways of looking at these conference realignments. I'm sick of the term already. It's almost like COVID terminology. It's getting old really fast. But the conference realignment chaos of the past week. Now, first of all, let's redirect the thinking here a little bit. Let's start to point out some of the greed. Let's start to point out some of the lack of leadership. Let's start to point some fingers because nobody seems to want to do it. First of all, it's not realignment. That's getting ridiculous. That's letting everyone off the hook saying things like conference realignment. You know what this is? This is consolidation. This is not realignment. There's no forward thinking to this. This is consolidation. These are mergers of powerful schools to make money. And they're not even thinking of it in terms of schools, where you actually go to a classroom and stuff. There's no regard for any regional appeal in this merger, in this consolidation of power. There's no regard for rivalries. There's no regard for expenses. I think that's missed often. There's no regard for expenses. The only concern in this consolidation is big brands playing big brands in football and basketball. That's it. And that domino was started by the really rich guys who happen to be right down the street. But don't call it realignment anymore. That's silly. It's a giant consolidation, and it's only focused on one thing: big brands playing big brands. Nick Saban, I'm the only person left that's going to acknowledge him as something other than the get-off-my-lawn guy who happens to be the best coach the game has ever known. Nick Saban, who, of course, is very, very easy to dislike, he has been the voice of reason for the better part of a year.
Look, I did not hear what anybody's comments have been about this. Look, there's a lot of traditions that we've had for a long time in college football, and I think we're in a time of evolution for whatever reasons. And some of those traditions are going to get sort of pushed by the wayside, I think. And it's sad. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent for college football, I guess you have to define what is good, bad, what is good and bad for college football. So I think one thing I would just hope that we would keep in mind in all the choices and decisions we make relative to what we do in college athletics is the student athlete. They're here to get an education. I want to try to help them develop careers on and off the field. And hopefully some of the choices and decisions that we make for college athletics in the future will impact them in a positive way. And I hope that we can keep that as a priority in terms of whatever we decide to do in the future of college football and college athletics. All right.
Well, okay, so throw up on your shoes. But let me help Nick out a little bit. I think Nick has tried to temper his get off my lawn speech. Let's see. Do we want to use the term prostitution? I don't know. That might be a little heavy, but let whatever form of prostitution you'd like to work in, it probably fits here. So, look, just say it, man. Somebody say it. Besides me, it is a consolidation of big brands getting as close to other big brands as possible with no regard for anything other than I need to go get near another big brand. That's it. The student athlete comment was laughable as usual. The whole thing is laughable as usual. Now, let me say this for the people who then don't care at all, which is the majority of fans. You don't care about schools. You don't care about anything other than I want to see a good game and I want to see my team win. Let me tell you something. You're going to get some of that, but I think you got a really lousy setup. As usual, you're going to end up, fans, getting shortchanged. This is not a great setup for you. I know it sounds a little sexier than it really is. It's not set up very well, and it is absolutely directionless. This was panic buying, started by one rich guy. Started the panic buying, and that's all it is. And I think in the end, because there's no leadership, because there's no guidance, because there's no thought whatsoever, I think the fans who think this is all kind of cool, I don't think it's going to work out for you. I don't. And I figured that out. So if you haven't figured out yet who the richest is that started this, they're right down the street. They started the whole thing. Nobody moved until they decided to move. And that's Texas. But okay, I mean, whatever. I mean, you don't care about that either. The part that you should care about is there's no setup. There's no real framework. There's no idea of what to do at all. So this is one of the things that's said a lot over the weekend and over the next few days that Nick Saban kind of went there. And I've heard this a few times now. It's not anybody's fault because it's everybody's fault. No, that's, again, not entirely true. Everybody panicked. True. Everybody's at fault. True. Everybody that's now in bed with each other as big brands has no direction. Also very true. But this started because of Texas and Oklahoma. The very first big brands to move, Oklahoma moved because Texas moved. And I don't think the SEC, by the way, is the best fit for Texas. I guess if you want to look at the top end of football brands, that's fine. But that's all that mattered. But it's not everyone. Texas created this thing. Now look what we're left with. What needs to happen next is what should have happened in the beginning. And this should be the real focus of sort of thinking now. And that is, man, how do they get this thing organized? Like, how do they figure this out? They won't. To answer your question, they won't. Because it's already, the dominoes are falling. They're all just falling down. And there's not going to be anybody that picks up the dominoes and says, guy, look, we got to come up with a reasonable way to do all this stuff. And we got to have some kind of systematic playoff. We got to have some kind of concept what we're doing here. They won't. You should now be noticing and continue to notice how the industry of college football doesn't just have bad leadership. It's not just incompetent leadership. It has no leadership. None. There's no vision. There was no vision when this started. The only vision, imagine you operating your business this way. Imagine industry operating this way. And sure enough, they have. They've consolidated. They've merged. They've eaten themselves alive. And it ends up backfiring. But nobody in any industry would operate in total chaos like this. You would not be chasing, or you shouldn't, you would not be chasing the next big brand to get close to and have your board say, well, what are we doing this for? And you would say, I have no idea, but we got to hurry. That's what this is. There's no leadership at all. There is no vision. There is no concept of where this is going and how it all wraps up. There has been no plan, and there is no indication there's a plan. Let me give you the perfect example of what should have happened, and even today, tomorrow, a year from now, what should happen, and it won't. Nothing sensible will come of this. UCLA coach Chip Kelly, he's been there about 3 or 4 years. Okay, right? So Texas says, we're moving. Oklahoma says, we're going with you. That happens. UCLA and USC. USC would be the other biggest spender. Okay, money is candy to USC. Money is candy to Texas. They decided to make a move. There you go. So USC and UCLA say, we're getting out of here now. They're going to the Big 12, which is 18 now, which will need to be 20 sometime soon. So UCLA coach Chip Kelly, who was in the NFL for a while, you noticed how these guys that have NFL experience, Saban and Chip Kelly, you notice they keep saying the same things. Well, this isn't a very good plan because in the NFL they have plans. In the NFL they have ideas. Notice these guys with NFL experience pointing out in an industry has no concept. The NFL has a grasp of everything. So Chip Kelly over the weekend, he said, look, there's nothing I can do about this stuff, but if you're going to ask me, and they said, yeah, Chip, we're going to ask you. Okay, here's what he said. It will not happen, but here's exactly what he said, which is precisely correct. One conference, divisions are aligned geographically. Quote from Chip Kelly, who's been in the NFL. Do it like the NFL, where there's an NFC West, an NFC North, an NFC South, where it's the same thing, and then we all get together. But I think there should be one conference in all of college football, and you break it up like they do in the professional ranks. That makes the most sense. There's your travel question. There's all of those questions wrapped up. Right. It's one thing to move. It's one thing to chase big brands. It's one thing to say, screw this. We want to go make as much money as possible. All that's fine, I guess. But to be greedy and crazy, to be greedy and illogical, that's what's going on here. The NFL is full of greedy owners. The NFL is full of a lot of greedy people who want to make as much as possible. But they aren't lacking any vision whatsoever. They had a plan. They follow a plan. They're constantly tinkering with their model. This has no model. None. You walk into a conference room and you say, we got to merge with those guys. Oh, yeah, why? I don't know, but let's just hurry up. Well, what's the economies of scale? I mean, how's that? What's the synergy here? How are we operate? What are our expenses going to be like? I don't know. Just hurry up. That's what this is. I don't know who listening right now or watching right now with that ridiculously bright light in my face. I don't know who operates this way. Nobody operates by saying, I don't have a plan. I just know we need to hurry up. Chip Kelly is exactly right. Now, it should have started that way, but it didn't. So now you got to think, well, gosh, Jeff, these, everybody's big guys are merging with other big guys, blah, blah, blah. We get it. It's cool for fans. And then I would say, sure, maybe this month you'll figure it out and do what Chip Kelly just suggested or do what Jeff Ford just suggested. And that is you are 4 conferences governed by similar rules with similar plans and similar visions. They're not going to do that next week. I don't think they'll do that 3 months from now. I don't think they'll do that 3 years from now. There's no indication there is any central figure or common sense in the industry of college football. None. I can't think of another industry that can operate in such chaos and not go belly up, but there's very few industries that have just a bunch of rich men handing them money. That's what this is. Unlimited funds just because. So Chip Kelly's right. 4 regionally based conferences needed to be created or need to be created with across-the-board rules. You would appoint a commissioner and a board, and you would implement revenue sharing. That's what you would do. None of it. None of it. Not even a hint. Not even a hint. Instead, they have nothing in place except hurry up. The investment and merger strategy is, I don't know, hurry up. They've created across the board. They should have created across the board rules. Should have thought about that. Do you think they'll come back and do that? They will not. No, they will not do that. Instead, they have nothing in place because the whole thing is driven by not just greed, crazy greed, out of control greed. The big brown down the street, the biggest brand of all, is the greediest of all. And if it's one, again, be greedy. Be greedy. Want to make your money. You're tired of being the sugar daddy for everybody else. All that stuff is, at some level, it's fine. But to do this whole consolidation without any plan at all, without any regard for expenses. I mean, imagine you go to your boss. I don't know how many different sensible ways to make an example of how stupid this is. You go to your boss and say, you go to your board. Happens all the time. Who knows what's being gobbled up in this city right now? Everybody's merging, consolidation, whatever. But you stand there and say, we're going to buy them. We're going to merge with them. Well, what are the expenses? I don't know. You have no clue about expenses? No. They may suck. Well, why would we merge with somebody who's going to drive up our costs so much? I don't know. We just need to hurry. That's it. That's it. That's all that's happened. Making money is fine, but making money with no planning is idiotic. It should have been done regionally. They had no regard for the expenses. They had no regard for other sports. It really is like somebody had a bunch of logos sitting on a table and said, let's just find the most famous logos with the biggest and most famous brands, and let's just stick them close to each other, and then we'll play from there.